My name is Liam, and before last week I would have told you this building, Apex Data Solutions, was just a towering monument to corporate ambition. Now I know it's something else entirely. Something vast and something hungry. It all started when I landed the night archivist gig. Odd hours but good pay, especially after the last place laid me off. The office was on the 40th floor of one of those sleek black glass skyscrapers that pierce the city skyline. Empty at night, mostly. Just me, the hum of servers, and rows upon rows of old data, forgotten files from companies long defunct. On my first night, I found it. Tucked away in the back of a desk drawer behind a stack of brittle invoices was a small, plain, leather-bound notebook. No title on the cover, just a worn texture. Inside, scrawled in faint, precise handwriting, were a series of bizarre night protocol rules. I figured it was some kind of elaborate hazing from the last guy. A joke. My predecessor, a quiet, pale man named Arthur, had left unexpectedly, or so HR said. This was probably his idea of a farewell prank. I chuckled as I read the first few. Rule 1. Always verify the floor indicator on the main elevator. If it shows anything other than a numbered floor, exit immediately. Rule 2. The air intake vents on floors 35-42 sometimes hum louder after midnight. Do not acknowledge them, they dislike attention. Nuts. But one rule, near the top of the list, caught my eye because it seemed relevant to my first task. Rule 3. Never use the executive elevator after 10 p.m. Access is only permitted for floors 130. Protocol dictates all other levels are sealed. My first big job was to retrieve some ancient physical data logs from the off-site archives. Turns out, off-site just meant the 55th floor, way up near the building's crown. It was almost 11 p.m. I looked at the emergency stairwell, then up at the dizzying heights. 15 flights of stairs? No way. Not when the sleek, empty executive elevator sat right there, doors gleaming. Rule 3, huh? I muttered to the empty hall, a cynical smirk on my face. Fine for lower levels. I hit the button for the 55th. The elevator chimed softly, the doors slid open, and I stepped into its polished, silent interior. The ride up was smooth, fast, almost unnervingly quiet. It felt perfectly normal. I even had a moment of smug satisfaction. See, I thought, just an overactive imagination from poor old Arthur. I found the files on the 55th easily enough, retrieved the boxes, and stacked them on a cart. Time to head back down. I pushed the down button for the executive elevator again. The doors slid open. I wheeled the cart in. The chime sounded, and as the doors closed, the smooth ride ended. The lights flickered once, plunging the car into momentary darkness, then returned with a sickly yellow glow. The elevator car gave a sudden bone-jarring lurch, dropping a full floor, then slamming to a halt. My stomach lurched into my throat, and the cart of files rattled violently. "Whoa!" I mumbled, bracing myself. Then, through the sudden, unsettling silence that followed, I heard it. A faint, high-pitched whimper, seeming to come from the elevator shaft itself, or perhaps from the walls of the car. It sounded impossibly close. The elevator shuddered again. Less of a drop, more like something heavy scraping against the outside of the car. The floor indicator above the door flickered wildly, cycling through random numbers. 62, 19, 8, then inexplicably stopping on -1. A floor that didn't exist in this building. The doors hissed open. My breath hitched. The hallway outside was swallowed in absolute darkness, deeper than any shadow, devoid of even emergency lights. And from that void, I felt a chilling, profound cold wash over me, carrying with it a faint metallic scent. I didn't see anything, but the feeling of immense, hungry space pressing in was overwhelming. The doors hissed shut again, the indicator flickering back to 40. The whimper returned, now sounding like it was trapped inside the car with me. The smooth ride down resumed, but it was no longer normal. Every floor it passed, I felt a faint pressure, a cold breath against the back of my neck. I didn't relax until the doors opened on my floor, the familiar glow of the office lights a welcome sight. I practically threw myself in the cart out of the elevator. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. The rules weren't a joke, this was real. I spent the next hour trying to convince myself it was a hallucination, a malfunction, anything but what my gut screamed it was. I even went to the elevator bay and peered into the executive shaft as if a glance could undo what I'd just experienced. Nothing. Just the usual silent, unmoving cables. But the cold dread that now clung to me felt far too real. My eyes kept drifting to the small, leather-bound notebook on my desk. It had been sitting there innocently enough since I found it, but now it seemed to hum with a silent energy. I picked it up, my fingers brushing over the rough, worn cover. I flipped through the pages. The handwriting still looked faded, still looked like Arthur's, but on the page with Rule 3, where it described the executive elevator, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor seemed to pass through the ink as if it had just been written, and beneath it a new line, barely visible before, now pulsed with a faint internal light. Consequence protocol initiated. Unregistered access requires repudiation. Repudiation? My blood ran cold. This wasn't a joke. It was a live document, and it was reacting to me. I decided to try and ignore it. I had other files to archive, other tasks to complete. I pushed the unsettling notebook to the side of my desk and focused on the glowing computer screen. Time ticked past midnight. As the clock on my monitor flipped to 12:01 a.m., I heard it. A low, persistent hum. It was coming from the air intake vents. My eyes snapped to the vent on the wall near my desk. The hum started faintly, then grew steadily louder, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to fill the very bones of the building. I remembered Rule 2. The air intake vents on floors 35-42 sometimes hum louder after midnight. Do not acknowledge them. They dislike attention. I gritted my teeth. I would not acknowledge them. I tried to focus on my work, but the hum grew, now accompanied by a faint whispering sound. It wasn't distinct words, more like a collective sigh, or the murmur of a vast, unseen crowd just behind the vent grills. The sound was distracting, invasive. It began to feel like the hum was inside my head, vibrating behind my eyes. I could feel something reaching out from the vents, a non-physical presence probing at my mind, trying to draw my attention. It was a terrifying, suffocating sensation, like drowning in air. I squeezed my eyes shut, rocking back and forth in my chair, repeating under my breath, "It's just the vents, it's just the vents." The hum intensified, becoming a deafening roar in my ears. The whispers sharpened, cutting through the noise, becoming impossibly clear. They weren't just in the vents anymore. They were all around me, circling, tightening, hissing my name. "Liam, look at us!" "You broke the rule!" I lunged forward, slamming my hands over my ears. The noise was unbearable, the pressure in my head immense. Just as I thought my eardrums would burst, it stopped. Instantly, silence, deeper, heavier than before. I slowly took my hands away from my ears. The vents were silent, the air was clear. The office lights were steady, but my head throbbed and a cold sweat plastered my shirt to my back. My eyes darted to the notebook. It lay open on my desk. And on a fresh, pristine page that had been blank just minutes before, a new rule scrawled in bold, shimmering ink filled the page. Final protocol. At 3 a.m., ascend to the building's highest accessible point. Stand on the outermost ledge facing the city. Speak the consecration phrase, "I acknowledge the silence." I bear the site, the archive consumes all. Compliance is not optional. Failure to complete ensures permanent archiving. My blood ran cold. The ledge, the summit. This was what these rules were building to, what Arthur had been trying to warn me about. Permanent archiving. I knew with chilling certainty what that meant. I had just hours. The next 2 hours were a blur of cold fear and fast actions. Every creak of the building, every far-off city siren made me jump. My mind raced, trying to find a way out, a trick. But the words, "You have to do this. If you don't, you'll be stored away forever," echoed in my mind. It felt like a cold, unbreakable rule. Arthur hadn't just left, he'd failed. Or worse, he'd given in. At 2:50 a.m., I stood up. My legs felt stiff and heavy. The notebook lay open on my desk, the last rule glowing in a scary way. The building felt different now. It wasn't just empty. It felt like it was watching me, a huge, quiet eye. I grabbed my flashlight and went to the emergency stairs. Rule after rule told me to stay away from the executive elevator late at night. I wasn't going to risk it again, even if it meant climbing the 15 flights to the roof door. Each step echoed in the heavy silence. The steel stairs groaned under my weight. The air grew colder, thinner, with a faint dry smell like old paper and clean air. Finally, breathing hard, I reached the roof access door on the 58th floor. It was heavy, a metal door with a single dark emergency exit sign above it. My hand shook as I pushed the bar. It swung open with a slow metal screech. Outside, there weren't bright city lights, but a dark, swirling blackness that felt wrong. I stepped out onto the roof. The wind immediately tore at my clothes, whipping my hair, but it was strangely cold for July. The city stretched out below me, a shining pattern of lights, uncaring. but above me the sky wasn't black. It was a swirling, blurry gray like TV static, reaching up forever. The air itself shook with a deep, rumbling sound, much lower than any building noise. It seemed to come from the huge, empty sky. My eyes found the edge. It was a thin, scary strip of concrete, less than 2 feet wide, going around the building. Far below, the streetlights looked like scattered grains of rice. My stomach tightened, but the thought of being stored away forever pushed me on. I made myself walk to the edge, my boots scraping on the rough concrete. The wind tried to push me, to whisper tempting thoughts of freedom into my ears, but I ignored it. I looked down. The dizzying drop felt like it was pulling me in, a huge, empty mouth. The city lights moved in my eyes, twisting, blurring, as if they were alive. It was 3 a.m., my watch showed the glowing numbers. My voice felt like sandpaper, but I knew I had to speak. I took a deep, shaky breath, the freezing air burning my lungs. I acknowledged the silence, I began, my voice barely a whisper against the roaring wind. As the words left my lips, the city lights below seemed to dim a little, and the deep hum in the air got louder, shaking through my feet. I bear the sight, I continued, pushing the words out. As sight left me, the swirling gray sky above seemed to ripple, and for a short moment I saw it. Not stars, but countless, ancient eyes, big and cold, opening and closing in the static. They were staring down at the building, staring at me. The archive consumes all. My final words. As I said them, I felt a shock, not in my body, but deep inside me. The city lights below flared, then suddenly went dark, floor by floor, not just in this building, but all over the city. Only the far-off, uncaring moon glowed. The humming stopped, the wind died down. The air became still, thick with that metal smell from the elevator. The silence that followed was complete. It wasn't just empty, it was a deep, heavy quiet, filled with huge amounts of hidden information. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, but they felt different. Stronger, colder. I no longer felt afraid of the height. Instead, I felt a huge, calm understanding. I turned from the edge. The notebook lay open on the concrete where I'd dropped it. The final protocol was gone. In its place, a single, new line, glowing with that same shimmering ink. Welcome, custodian of the apex. Your archive awaits. I wasn't free.